myself out.
I am afraid of...
I'm terrified and paralyzed by...
I am deathly afraid of...
Welcome to the Sum of All Fears podcast with your host, me, Ryan Perrio. Hello and welcome to the Sum of All Fears podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Perrio. This week, my guest is Melissa May Curtis of the Netflix show Pet Stars, a reality series on Netflix. You can get that on Netflix right now. I watched season 1 just earlier this afternoon. Melissa worked with Colleen, the owner of Pets on Q, in finance. And when she quit her job, she then decided to work for Pets on Q full-time. So Pet Stars is basically a reality show based on the adventures of Pets on Q trying to sign and scout for new animals to represent in TV shows and commercials. It's a really fascinating, industry to kind of check out and just look around and just see all the crazy animals. In this episode, we talk about representing animals, Melissa's life, reality TV, and then we get into her fear of the dark. So let's get into that interview right now with Melissa May Curtis. My guest is Netflix star and of Pet Stars, and I guess the second in command at Pets on Q talent agency, Melissa May Curtis. Melissa,
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I am well. Thank you, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing great. We were just talking about how your husband is out in Hawaii just working and suffering immensely at this resort filming a reality TV.
Yes, it's true. He's just hating it at a beautiful resort in Hilo on the Big Island, and I have a hard time feeling sad for him.
Jealous may be the more appropriate word.
Yeah. I plan on visiting him at some point during his tenure there, but yeah, you never know where you're going to go when you work in reality TV. So
what is it like being married to the person that kind of witnesses reality TV firsthand?
Well, it's interesting because he has to sign NDAs whenever he works on a new show. So there's a lot of things he cannot tell me.
Mm-hmm.
But he definitely has skewed his view on party culture and just being a father of daughters. I can tell you that because we have 2 kids. We have 2 daughters aged 9 and 20. And back in the day when he was filming Jersey Shore, he filmed all the Jersey Shores. He would just call me and be like, oh my gosh, as the show got bigger and bigger, because I don't understand these girls. There's all these young girls lining up just to meet these guys and party with them. There's lines around the block. And I just want to ask them, where is your father? What is going on? And so it really did a mind scramble on him as a young father of daughters. And he just goes, I don't understand why people like these shows. They're crazy, and then just as the genre has stayed and has grown, and as he has worked on even more and more shows, he's like, well, I guess I don't know what I'm talking about. I'll just keep my mouth shut and film these guys because clearly, so it's kind of a funny thing. It's definitely an interesting perspective, and it's afforded my husband the opportunity to travel the world, and you can't complain about that. But there's never a dull moment, I'll tell you that.
Oh, it's adorable. Just comes home and I just picture the scene from Billy Madison where he's like, I can't wait to go to high school. Don't you say that. Don't you ever say that.
Exactly. It's not what you think it's going to be, but everybody has to find that out on their own, I guess.
But that would be like if you're a father of daughters and you just see all these women just clamoring, like it's
Yes.
got to be kind of a sensory overload as a protective parent to just see all of this, what
Absolutely.
you would think is just parental like neglect almost.
Well, and they were so young, and the other thing, my husband specializes in a special kind of camera called a RoboCam or a Pelco cam. So he doesn't shoulder up with the big camera and like follow the kids to the nightclub. He sits in a control room where they go wire the house with all these little spy cams all over the place. And then he sits there with, 30 monitors linked to 30 cameras at different places and has these little joystick controls that he uses to roll tape and zoom when, people walk into that room or into that camera. And so he sits there with the director and the producers, but he also works the night shift typically because that's when the most goes down on these shows. And that's also when they're all partying and bringing people back to their rooms. And, so he would be filming, the worst of the worst, and then just being like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe the things I see. There's all these things that I see that we can't even air, and oh my God, these poor women, these women have no self-esteem. And I'm like, you're thinking about it wrong. So these women are there because they want to be there. These are empowered women of the modern day that are making their choices. And this is their thing. And he's like, no, honey, you have no idea. These women need dads. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what their issues are, but no, this is not okay. So it was just, also my husband comes from a very, conservative Mormon upbringing. So he has a little bit of a skewed view of what should happen, but it's pretty funny. He's the funny guy to be doing all that with his background,
Just every father's nightmare.
Every father's nightmare, seriously. And he's just like, whatever we got to do to make sure our daughters know, like never hang out with celebrities. Don't try to do that. It's just pretty funny.
But I think some of that is just kind of glamorized too, just a little bit. Like
for sure.
Which you also are. You are a reality TV star in your own right. Now it's an interesting story because I guess you started with a coworker. Now, did the CEO start at the bank before you, or were you the first one there?
I had been there for a number of years. I think when I met Colleen, I had already worked for the private bank for about 5 years. Mm-hmm. And I had worked in Beverly Hills, and she had been in the New York office. So I had never met her. And I think she started a little bit after I did. Mm-hmm. Colleen's a bit younger than me. And then she decided to transfer from New York City to Los Angeles. And so I met her, when she moved out there, and we sat next to each other, and she was already doing Pets on Q kind of on the side with her mm-hmm. dog and with people, and had kind of started it as a little side hustle. But I was intrigued by it because I was tired of working in finance, Mm-hmm. And I had a disabled dog, and she had a disabled dog. So we kind of bonded over that. And then she was like, yeah, I'm going to basically retire from finance and go do this full time. And I said, well, I want to come work for you. So when I was 40, I just completely retired, quit my job, and went all in to go work for my friend's startup. And my poor husband and family, they were like, wow, you're just retiring, huh? Just kissing all that goodbye. And I was like, yep, that's what's happening. So I kind of jumped all in with the idea that, finance will always be there if I have to go back to it, which is absolutely true. And I'm actually glad I took that leap because, I went and worked for Colleen, and we were able to get a season of a show about our business. And, now we're just kind of jamming with that and seeing what comes next.
But you also have those coworkers, like you just instantly like, oh, you have like one little conversation, and then it's just like every day you're the person you're looking for when you're at work. Like, okay, where are they?
Exactly. Like there's sometimes you just click with people, and, Colleen and I, that's exactly how it was. We just completely clicked. We're very different. We're from very different places. Like I said, I'm a bit older. I'm about 12 years older than her, if you can believe it. And, I'm married and have my kids well on their way. And at the time when we first met, she was single, and just at completely different phases of our life, but just completely hit it off with our love of animals and just being goofy girls, like trying to have fun and, trying to figure out what we wanted to do next. And so it worked out really great. And it's just so weird because we have such a good time together. And even now, like we hang out, whenever we can. COVID made it kind of difficult. Our COVID year was tough, but now we're back to seeing each other more often. And it's really great. And she's married now and getting ready to have her first baby now. And, so there's a lot of fun things happening, which is really cool.
So you're almost like a friend and mentor because you can kind of step by step, okay, this is kind of what to expect.
For sure. And I'm so excited, because I'm at this point where, like I said, my kids are well on their way to, my one daughter is an adult. She's 20 years old. I'm not having any more kids, and so I have a lot of friends though that are in their 30s and 40s even that are having their first kids. And so it's fun for me. I'm like the old grandma that knows what's up. And I get to watch these young kids go through all the stuff I went through 20 plus years ago and just, can babysit their babies and give them right back. So
you can tell them about screenless Sundays. That's such a cool idea. Like, I know I've seen a couple of families that have kind of a no screen time kind of, family dinner. Like one of my,
go ahead.
I was gonna say one of my guests, he's a military family. He grew up in like the grandparents' house where everybody kind of gathered, and then when that grandmother passed, that tradition kind of faded, and so he's kind of bringing it back with his wife and kids, and it's real interesting to see like some, different families kind of approach how can we kind of, I guess, stay communication open without having to, relent to just constant screening and.
Absolutely. I mean, I like it for me because I find myself on my phone a lot. And, we try to watch movies together and my kids will be like, hey, let's watch this movie. And then if I'm not super engaged in whatever cartoon we're watching, I'm going to pull out my phone and start scrolling. And my youngest daughter gets so mad. She's like, Mom, watch the movie, get off your phone kind of thing. So it kind of came about because I was like, gosh, I need a day where I'm really just off my phone. And Sunday was the perfect day. And then we kind of made it like no TV, no screens, no computers, no nothing. And just screen free. We play music, we can read, we can draw, we can play with toys, go to the pool, whatever, just without technology. And it's so great. It's become all of our favorite days because we do a lot together. My kids are baking cookies together and we're, hanging out, painting and doing stuff. I love it. I highly recommend it to everybody. It's just good to get unplugged,
Yeah, and something you can plan. You can build anticipation by planning to go somewhere or do something.
Yes. Yeah, it's really great. It's awesome. And I really do believe it's good for us to kind of, take a deep breath, calm our brains down, get off of the screens. Who knows what these things are doing to us long term? All the blue lights and everything. Yeah. It can't be good.
It may not be. And it's interesting, too, that you were in finance. So if anybody is going to know the cost of a dream, going back to your Pet Stars and Pets on Q, it's like you guys know the pitfalls because so many people have dreams and then don't realize the financial or fiscal responsibility to sustain something
right
like a Pets on Q, or to, in this case, take it to levels that, I'm sure Colleen, when she started it, maybe imagined, but thought maybe that's a little unrealistic.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is Colleen is a brilliant woman with a lot of support behind her. Her family is very supportive, and so she's a really big dreamer. My issue with Colleen has always been there's so many things she wants to do. I have to ground her in reality a lot of the time and tell her no. But it's great because I think that now the business is going to a place where, like you said, like we had no idea we could get here, and we're kind of like, wow. We got a Netflix show about us in the business. Like, we can do anything, man. Like, the world is our oyster. Now, what are we going to do? Kind of thing. So we'll have to see what comes next. It's kind of crazy.
And so, it again, because of your connections to the film, and then I guess her connections to animals, like it's a really good, I guess, partnership that you have going on of being able to maximize, your clients and, I guess, build and develop because you are on both sides of the industry.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, even animal influencers, they all dream of stardom on set, just like show parents, the parents of these animals, once they get to a certain level, with their Instagram or TikTok or whatever, they always set their sights on Hollywood. And what's interesting is, animal influencers, just like all influencers are, I think here to stay at some level, even though people tire of influencer antics. But a human being, can easily transition typically from, say, being an influencer to trying other things out, because most people who are creative have a lot of different creative talents. Animals aren't typically the same. If you have a really famous cat, say a Kobe the cat, millions of followers. That cat's great when you're taking pictures of it at home in the house, but taking that untrained animal to set is never going to fly. So it's interesting. The influencers always want to make that transition, but unless their animals are highly, highly trained, which you can teach an old dog new tricks. So, we do have a lot of dogs that can make that crossover, but the cats are very, very difficult because once you have a cat that's 2 or 3 or 4 years old, kind of set in its ways, and you're taking all these pictures at home, you can't take that cat on set and expect him to do anything. It's not going to listen to you. Cats do their own thing, man. So it's very interesting because they all want it, but it's kind of like, well, I don't know if your cat's really made out for
anything
for
more
set
than
work.
print. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's got to, how many obedience schools, come in contact with you to try to enlist you, your assistance and training services? Because I would think that would be a huge, booster, clientele to have like that in your roster. It's
more animal trainers, not so much obedience schools, but the actual, well-known trainers that train animals for set work, the ones that do it humanely and because the training industry has changed a lot as everything has changed as time has progressed and new guidelines have been put in place about animal safety and the treatment of animals on set. And so guidelines are very different now than they were even 10 or 20 years ago. And so we really like to work with the kind of up and coming trainers, the ones that only use positive reinforcement, that are really, and that really try to pull animals from rescues and stuff. We get a lot of commercials that want to use rescued animals. And it's funny, you can get a young dog that you pull from a shelter and train for a couple of weeks and put them on set, and they're amazing. And then it's a lot easier to find them a forever home because people love that idea of their animal having been on a commercial for whatever reason. They're more likely to adopt it if they know it had this shining moment, even if they never do commercials again. It's kind of a crazy thing. So we try to do that as much as possible.
Exposure always, I believe, helps those kinds of things. Like anybody,
for sure.
And I'm an animal lover myself, and I just wonder, like, the puppy bowl, is that something you guys is that an all hands on deck? Are you guys all at the puppy bowl?
We've never done the puppy bowl, actually. That's not something we've ever worked on. So we do a lot of one-offs, and we do a lot of like series shows and things like that. But no, we've never done the puppy bowl, but I'm telling you, my dog watches the puppy bowl. Yeah.
I was like that. I would wonder if that was somewhere, because I know a lot of shelters use those. Like they definitely, like you said, the exposure to get these animals adopted and to maybe not adopt that animal, but to get, visibility to the other dogs at the shelter.
Right. Well, and a lot of these, animal rescue shelters, nonprofits, they need support and they need funding, so anytime they can get attached to a project and just even get a mention, is really critical for them. And so we try to do that whenever we can as well. I mean, there's every major city, has an animal overpopulation problem, if I can talk. And here in Los Angeles, we're no exception. There's just so many animals on the streets here, and our shelters are overflowing. COVID, surprisingly had an effect where a lot of animals were getting adopted. And we saw this huge kind of emptying of shelters almost nationwide, where people were just rushing out and getting animals. The concern now is, as things are opening back up, are those people going to keep those animals, or are they going to resurrender them? And so we're kind of waiting to see how the tide goes. We're hopeful that, most people who adopted animals during the pandemic knew what kind of a commitment they were making, and definitely were planning for it. But it's going to be an interesting 6 months, that's sure, in the world of animal rescue.
So how many, are you still in Los Angeles then? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm in Burbank. Mm-hmm.
All right. And it's Colleen in Los Angeles, or she?
Yes. She's in West Hollywood.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all have definitely migrated and kind of set roots, which you should. And if you're going to do film and commercial and stuff, you're in the right spot for, I do comedy in my spare time. And so, if you want to be on TV, New York or LA is where you have to be. I would say, even pandemic or not. There's been a comedy migration to, Austin, Texas, where it's kind of become the Wild West down here. It's like a comedic gold rush that people are trying to.
I have a lot of friends that live in Austin. Even my own sister moved to Austin. Austin's happening right now, I guess.
Yeah, but comedy wise, it's just it's kind of like everybody's because Austin was shut down and everything kind of for their comedy scene just went away. Like their comedy club, like ended up, I guess, closing during the pandemic and stuff like that. So Austin kind of, more than any other city, kind of lost all of their, I guess, comedic places. And so now Joe Rogan moved there, like all these big, I guess, comedic celebrities are setting roots in Austin. So everybody's trying to move to Austin to kind of showcase in front of them. So it's kind of been it's interesting to watch for someone that lives just a couple hours away to see all this stuff start to transition to Austin, and everybody trying to set roots in Austin, thinking that's going to be the place to build a career. And
I don't know. I think the pandemic forced a lot of us to look at our life choices and where we were at and go, am I really happy here? You know, we saw people leaving Los Angeles in droves because it is really expensive to live here. And I think people have discovered too, you know, yes, if you want to be, you know, big time, you want to be on like a big time show, you kind of need to be in Los Angeles, New York. But a lot of people have discovered I can make my own show. I can do my own thing. I can make a web series. I can shoot, you know, a series myself kind of thing anywhere, you know, and we've seen a ton of people leaving, especially actors and writers who just have kind of been like, you know, I've been here for 10 years and now I'm ready for something else. Cause you know, the pandemic just kind of forced us all to slow down and go, am I really happy? You know, and for some people, the answer was absolutely not. And for others, it was like, nope, I'm exactly where I need to be, you know? And that's kind of where I was like, gosh, you know, it's nice that there's not so much traffic. And I wish all these people were still here, but I'm pretty happy living in LA. I guess I'll stay here for a while.
Yeah. And it's possible, you know, also with the pandemic and I guess California having, I would say, tougher restrictions than what we have here, that it maybe there's a frustration of not being able to either perform or work, or that could also lead to a little bit of a migration out.
Sure. Yeah, it was. I mean, they really cracked down here and it was really difficult for anyone to make a living. And then even now, you know, surprisingly, you don't think of Los Angeles as a theater town because it's mostly movies, but there's actually a ton of theater that is produced here. It might not be high caliber theater, but there's a lot of theater that's done here. And one of my favorite shows every year is the Fringe Fest, which is a festival of theater shows that they do at all these different theaters in Hollywood. And they're doing it virtual this year. They didn't do it last year at all. And they're doing it virtual this year. And I got to tell you, as a lover of live theater, the thought of watching a virtual theater show just does not appeal to me at all, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of the, like, I'd rather just not go this year and wait till it's back in person, you know, which is just difficult.
And so what has, I guess, working with Pets on Q kind of shown you that you, as an animal lover, you may not have been aware of? Like, what is it kind of, I guess, maybe brought more awareness to?
Well, you know, before I worked at Pets on Q, I didn't really fully understand, you know, the benefits of fostering. I had never fostered animals before. I only ever adopted animals. All my animals had come from shelters, but I had never fostered anything. And I didn't realize that for the most part, if you choose to foster a dog or a cat or a turtle or whatever from a, you know, nonprofit or an animal rescue, they're going to give you everything you need and you don't have to pay for anything. They're going to, you know, send you this dog, or you go pick up this dog and they're going to give you the food and the blankets and the harness. They're going to cover all the medical bills. They're going to cover everything. You literally just have to provide a place for that dog or cat or what have you to have a safe space for X amount of time, and until it finds its forever home. And so I think that's really great. So we, of course, started fostering once I learned more about it. In terms of business, you know, I have been constantly surprised at how much money people can make with their pets. And I don't mean just set work. I mean, just in general, there's a lot of merchandising opportunities. There's a lot of licensing opportunities. There's just a lot of monetization opportunities out there for people that are good at self-promotion on social media. And once you get to a certain level, whether you have an animal account or a human account, there's a lot of doors that are opened up to you. I used to think it was crazy. And I would tell my kids, you know, being famous on social media isn't being famous. Stop looking at these stupid influencers kind of thing. But the reality is being famous on social media is its own thing. And there's a lot of people that can make a lot of money doing it. And that was just shocking to me as somebody who worked in finance and, I'd never done a loan for anybody that was an influencer, at that time. And then just delving into that and saying, oh my gosh, these people are making a lot of money. You made how much on your cat? Holy shit. Like this is a thing, and then trying to align myself and Colleen and just the business of Pets on Q with people who are interested in monetizing their accounts, but also are more interested in taking good care of their animals and promoting a good message and putting out good values. And finding that kind of mixture was what we were looking for to be kind of our, the treasure trove of what we were looking for. People that were good at monetization and self-promotion, but also gave a shit about their animals and wanted the best for them, because there's definitely people out there that get a little show parenty and will kind of put their animal in any situation. They don't really care because they just want that check, and trying to weed those people out. So it's very interesting. It's a very interesting world of personalities, I tell you.
Get a lot of Best in Show vibes where the parents, whatever, where they get hit with that chew toy, like they have to go back to the hotel where Parker Posey.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And then, Colleen has fired people on set 100%. So she's a little bit more, she can be a little bit more aggressive than me when it comes to stuff like that. And she's full on just like, nope, your animal's not happy. Your animal's stressed. You're out of here kind of thing, So I let her be the heavy, which is fine with me.
And that's, as a leader, I guess I would say probably a more almost better, because you want the head of your thing to be the one that takes that stand. Of course. You don't want to have, I guess, dissension in the ranks. You want from the top down to, this is our vision, this is our goal.
Right. And there's plenty of people out there that emulate our vision and values, so we can hire someone else kind of thing. And that's kind of the mindset that we have taken. And, as we've built our talent roster and our brand roster, that's kind of really where we're at, is always kind of putting the animals first, which is, different, which you'd think that in working in an animal space, that would be all across the board. And it's really not. So that's been an interesting challenge as well, but it's been great. I mean, I love working with animals. I never thought I'd get to do anything like what I do ever.
And that's great. I mean, it's such a, I guess, refreshing thing, and to hear people, take such a passionate stance and to not, just, looks cute, let's get it, like that you do a thorough background on the ownership and how they're treated, and you take all that into consideration when you're, wanting to add this client to your roster.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we get hundreds of people applying daily to be on the roster, and we definitely don't accept all of them. And, we have a vetting process, and we love to meet our talent and just see their animals and make sure their animals are well taken care of, for a long time, especially in set work. Any animals that you would see in a movie, if you ever go back and watch, remember the movie Swiss Family Robinson? I'm probably dating myself here, but Disney did a live action Swiss Family Robinson back in, I think, like the 60s or 70s. And it's on Disney Plus. So of course we watched it with the kids because it was a movie I had liked when I was little. And I was shocked at just the way they were treating the animals in this movie, from the chickens to the geese to the donkeys to the tigers. It was just so horrific to watch. And I thought, if this was filmed way back then, I guarantee that so many animals perished during the making of this movie. It's so, so, so sad, and so just seeing kind of the change of things. And even now, when they have animals, there was a show, I can't remember what it was an HBO show about horse racing. I want to say like 9 or 10 years ago. And like horses just kept dying on set. And they went through, I think, 5 or 6 horses finally before they finally shut down production. And it was just like, my God, and so the guidelines just used to just be non-existent. And so we're finally to a point where people give a shit. And when they watch a movie, they want to go, oh my God, I hope these animals were okay kind of thing. And it's a lot different now, thank God. And there's still more work to be done, but yes, people finally care, and they finally want to see the animals are treated well. And that's huge, and so hopefully that just continues on and parlays out into other areas.
Because I would think that now that you probably have like animal doctors, like even before you start filming, just kind of,
Right. Well, there's all kinds of things. I mean, usually American Humane and different organizations have a representative on set now to make sure, just kind of to oversee things. You have to be permitted to bring animals on set. There's all kinds of insurances in place. Your wranglers need to be permitted. There's all kinds of just paperwork and things. So if you're going to do a production that has any kind of animals on set, there's a lot more hoops you have to jump through. And so, that's a deterrent. My husband would always say the worst days on set are the days with kids and animals because they're just unpredictable. And there's so many extra people on set for those things. And so it was just kind of funny. He's like, oh, and you're going to do a show about animals that's for kids. Awesome.
Yeah.
So,
but I like
interesting.
But I kind of like, you guys having separate projects that way, it doesn't, your office work stays at work. You can talk about it.
Right, exactly.
And have different stories. And plus,
exactly.
I couldn't imagine just the stress and anxiety that those animals are just subjected to. Because I feel like animals are just a byproduct of what you kind of, like, they don't know the different feelings of emotions. So their views are very simple. It's like, it's, anxiety, anger, and all that stuff all folds into one emotion, and happy, calm is a different one.
Exactly. Animals feed off of your energy, and that absolutely translates to set, that translates to set as well. And so we would have instances where just having the animal owner on set with them, because the animal owner is excited and nervous and does, and has all their pent up emotion because they're on set. We've had to say, hey, you need to leave because your vibe is making your animal nervous. Mm-hmm. You're stressing your animal out. I know you're excited to be here, but you're throwing everything off. So you got to go and we'll take care of everything from here. That kind of thing that definitely has happened. And then just being on set, the lights are really light, they're really bright and it's hot. You got cameras in your face, people yelling things at you, a whole different vibe, and the crew, they're professionals. They're there to get a job done, and so they're not necessarily thinking about how this, dog is reacting to the camera being in their face, which is why you have professional wranglers, why you have professional handlers and those representatives on set, like from American Humane and things like that. But even in the best scenarios, sometimes the dogs get stressed out and can't perform. And if they can't perform, you gotta cut and wait till they're ready. Maybe, and that might not be till the next day. That's why it's predictable, that's why it's unpredictable and difficult to work with, animals on set.
So how do you guys I wonder how animal handlers actually kind of get them kind of reset if they are kind of.
It depends on the situation. A lot of trainers nowadays use, like I said, positive reinforcement and food motivated animals. If you have a food motivated animal on set, that's the best. Because, they're willing to do just about anything to get that kibble or to get that, reward, whatever it is. And sometimes you just have to leave the situation, get them off set. What we try to do with our animals is get them into the set ahead of time without the crew. So if we know we're going to be shooting a commercial, on this soundstage on this day, we try to go a couple hours early or a day early, with our handler, with the animal, so they can just check it out, smell everything, go around, see things. That's not always possible, but in a perfect scenario, we would always be trying to, get those animals there and see if they can do it. We haven't been doing production, because COVID, so we're just now kind of getting back into castings and stuff. We've spent the last year and a half really just focused on online promotions via Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, because again, everything was shut down. So we couldn't do an audition, a casting. We couldn't set foot on set. Now it's just finally starting to get opened again.
Well, that's great. And the food-based animals, I was like, that just made me laugh because I was thinking, well, the camera adds 10 pounds. Well,
not on animals.
The handler adds 10 pounds on animals.
Exactly.
With all the treats.
It's too funny.
See, to me, the more impressive trained animal is the cat, though. Like anybody that can train
Absolutely.
a cat to be a cat on TV.
No, the trained cats are amazing, and cats are just as trainable. But the thing with the cat is they're very aloof and very smart. You got to start early. So, we have these cats we work with that are trained, the Savitsky cats. They were on America's Got Talent. And these cats are amazing. They're some of the most amazing cats you're ever going to see. And it's like, I can't believe the cat does this and this and this. And it's like, yep. So, it's really quite incredible, actually, what people can do with their pets. It's just about consistency and starting when they're young, I think. I'm no trainer. My dog doesn't even come when I call him. So
unless you have treats, then.
Unless I have treats, and then he'll come for the treats only, but then he just snubs me. So
he is very aloof, it sounds like.
It's pretty funny.
So my podcast is kind of about fears, and you have an interesting one, or one that most people have, but eventually they kind of either outgrow or just kind of put aside. And go ahead and tell the listeners what you're afraid of.
Well, it's so funny. I have had sort of a crippling and stifling fear of the dark since I was about, I want to say 3 or 4 years old. Mm-hmm. I'm 44 now, to kind of give you an idea. And for me, fear of the dark was, even in my infancy and when I had this fear kind of blossom, I think there's a part of you that knows that you're being silly. At least for me, there was that little voice inside your head. But for whatever reason, my fear just sort of drowned out that voice my whole life. And it started for me, my parents bought a house when I was, again, 3 or 4 years old. I can't remember the exact year, that had an unfinished basement. Okay. And this was a little craftsman house in South Salt Lake City, Utah. And it was, about 1980. It's about the year. And when we moved into this house, the upstairs was finished. And there was, living room, dining room, kitchen area, kitchen nook, bathroom, bedroom. And then towards the back of the kitchen, there was a stairway leading downstairs. And the stairway basically went down to a landing that went out to the backyard. And then if you made a hard right, it went down into the unfinished basement. And at the very back of the unfinished basement, so if you walk down the stairs and walk through the basement, the very back of it were 2 finished bedrooms. And so that's where my room was, down in the dungeon, as I called it. And my parents' bedroom was way upstairs. And there were when I say unfinished basement, it was like concrete, exposed beams, no lights, like very much like out of a scary movie. Now, it wasn't full of some old stuff. Like it wasn't, like in scary movies, there's always like some old piano and mannequins. And like, it wasn't that. It was empty, right? But it was dark and it was cold. And the washer and dryer was in there. And then, like I said, the 2 rooms were at the back, and my room, I don't know why. When I think back, I go, why the hell? My room didn't have a door. So my room, you could turn the lights on, and it had, pink carpeting and, my bunk bed and all my, stuffed animals and stuff, but there was no door on my room. Why? I don't know. And so me being, a kid, my parents would come down there, tuck me in, put me to bed, and then go upstairs, and I would just lay there in bed and just look out into the darkness of the of the dungeon basement, and I would see all kinds of things. How your imagination, there was an old man that lived in the basement. There was all kinds of things I would see, and it would scare the shit out of me. And I would tell my mom, I saw this or that, and they're like, oh, that's just your imagination, da 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 da. And they weren't wrong. It was my imagination, but in my little brain, I just kind of made up all these things. And so what I would do is in the morning, the sun would come up, and we had window wells, because it was a bit like in California, they don't have a lot of basements because of earthquakes, but basically there were window wells outside of the house that were basically kind of on par with the top ceiling of the basement. So light would come in a little bit in the morning. And so I would wake up and I'd turn my light on, and there were no lights in the basement. So again, I would leave my bedroom light on all day, so that when I would come down to go back into my room, the light was on. Otherwise, I would have to walk across the abyss of darkness to get to my room. And that was like the worst possible thing I could ever have to do. And I had this sort of idea that if I kept my eyes closed, none of the monsters in the basement could get me. Mm-hmm. So when I would leave my room or go to my room, I would walk really slowly with my eyes closed and my arms outstretched because there were beams, and I would just walk really slow. And then I'd hurry and get to my room and turn the light on. Or if I was leaving, I would walk really slow till I got to the bottom of the stairs, and I would run up the stairs as fast as I could. And that experience of that constant, like every day, that fear that was completely unfounded, that had nothing to do with anything. It was totally my own imagination, just grew and grew and grew. And it got to this point where, when we finally moved away from that house, and I was so glad to never have to sleep in that basement again, that fear kind of came with me and attached itself to all dark places. And so in my child mind, the dark was like water. It was like water that would just surround you and suppress you and envelop you. And there was nothing you could do to get out of it. And it was so scary to me that I would have a physical reaction where I would have an elevated heart rate and I would sweat and I would freeze and I wouldn't be able to move. And when you're little and you have a fear that's crippling like that, people, they try to talk you out of it. They go, no, there's nothing to be afraid of. Come on, let's go in the basement together. Let's go in the closet together. Let's shine a light under here, you know? And in a way that helps you realize that it's silly. But if, at least in my case, as that fear progressed and I got older, once I became an adult and I told, you know, my friends that I was afraid of the dark, or my boyfriend or whatever, then they would almost coddle me in a way. They would like do whatever they could to keep me out of situations where I was in the dark. And if anything, that would just make it worse. So as an adult, I found it was much easier to live with my fear because I had a flashlight on my phone and there were very few times I would ever be in the dark. And then, you know, my friends, like I said, they would always make sure I was never in the dark, but that just made it get worse and worse and worse, to where if I ever was in a situation where it was dark, like say walking to my car or, you know, if the power went out in my house, I would just be completely useless. Like I would just have to sit there and do nothing. Like it was so ridiculous. It got to a pretty funky place, you know? And it's weird when you're an adult and you're, you know, an educated member of society, and especially when you become a parent and you're having to, you know, rise to the occasion and you're like, but hey, honey, can you turn on your nightlight? Because mommy's really scared, you know, like that doesn't really fly in the world of parenting. And so it was something that had gotten to a point where my husband was like, God, Mel, you know, this is a pretty bad thing. Like, do you need therapy? Like, what do we need to do for this? You know? And to be fair, I should have probably been to therapy over it. And I never did. I never went, you know, to therapy about my phobia of the dark. And it just kind of grew and grew to where I hated driving at night. The idea of driving in the dark with my headlights going like ahead of me, like if there's street lights, I could handle it. But if I'm like, say on a dark road, you know, a dirt road with nothing but my street lights, it would just freak me the fuck out. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't drive. Like it would just make me hyperventilate. It was such a strange feeling of suppression. And I think fear of seeing something, because when I was little, I would always see things in the dark in the basement. And as I got older, I think it was the fear of maybe seeing something, if that makes sense. And I never did see anything because there's nothing there. But, you know, my brain couldn't kind of wrap itself around that. And there was this moment where I really knew I had a problem when I worked at an art gallery here in Los Angeles for a couple of years. I took a break from finance right around the time Obama got elected. I just kind of needed a break, and I went and I worked at an art gallery here I guess they're in North Hollywood, that specializes in renting art to production. So anytime you see a commercial or a movie that has a picture in the background, a painting that's framed, a kid's art on the wall, anything, any piece of artwork, a sculpture, anything that has been rented from a rental house somewhere and cleared, because whatever artist created that piece of art has the copyright to it. And so in order for it to be seen on film, television, commercial, whatever, there has to be a clearance. So I worked at an art gallery that specialized in renting art to production. So it was this huge warehouse gallery in the middle of this industrial park in North Hollywood. It was beautiful, just full of giant paintings, sculptures, whatever. And the front main gallery had all the sculptures and stuff. And most of the things that we were, you know, renting out, and these giant trucks would come from set and the guys would, you know, fill it up and bring us back art. So we had a lot of art coming and going, and we had this back gallery that was connected to the front gallery. And the back gallery kind of had all the stuff that didn't get rented as much or didn't move around as much, but it was still back there in case someone needed it. And so I used to have to go and go into the back gallery. And the back gallery was very similar to my basement in that it was an unfinished concrete room, and the light switch was at the far end of the gallery. And so what I would do is I would take my phone and I would open the door, and to open the main door, you would basically just open it. And again, we're in an industrial area. So there was this little like hook and nail. Like you'd open the door and you'd put this little hook over a nail on the wall that would hold that door open. And then I would have to walk through the gallery to the back to turn on the light. And so I would always take my phone, turn my flashlight on, whatever. Well, this one day we were in a hurry, didn't have my phone with me. I open the door, hook it on the nail. I take about 4 steps into the gallery and then I hear thunk and the door slams behind me. And I'm standing there in the back gallery and there's a little bit of light coming under the door, just enough to make every sculpture look like a demon. And I'm just standing there and I'm like 36 years old, I'm a grown ass woman. And I just start hyperventilating and I'm just like, oh my God. And my heart starts racing and I start crying. And then I finally just had to pull myself together and I turned around and I closed my eyes and I lifted my arms up just like I was a little kid in the basement and slowly walked to the door and opened it and then jumped out the door and cried in the little walkway between the galleries. And I thought, man, I am way too old for this shit. And my coworkers were like, oh my God, the gallery. And I told them what happened and they all knew that I was afraid of the dark. And they were like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no, this is good. I need to do stuff like this. I realized I had to start forcing myself into situations like this because I was so crippled by it. I didn't want to live in fear of dumb shit like that. And especially as a mom, I had to rise to the occasion for my kids because I didn't want them to be afraid of the same thing as me. And it was just so silly, it was just such an eye-opening moment. So embarrassing. All my coworkers, I'm crying. Good God, what's wrong with me?
See, that just reminds me of Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon. Like, I'm just too over this shit. Like, you're just that tired of being afraid of the dark.
Just tired of it, yeah. And so it was kind of funny. And I finally, the thing that clicked for me, because again, people had, especially when you're little. People, they try to tease it out of you, and they try to, but again, it's almost better because at least they're forcing you to think about it and put you in situations, and try to make you do stuff. And again, as I got older, my husband was so sweet. He would always be the one to turn the light off. He would always be make sure the lights were on for me and this and that. And then, I told him, I was like, you gotta start making me be in the dark more because I have to get past this. And, it was kind of a slow progression for me, but then finally, I had this moment where somebody said the exact thing that I needed to hear at the exact right moment where I was talking to somebody about something else. And this woman said to me, she said, oh, by the way, just kind of off the cuff, she said, you don't have to be afraid of the dark anymore because, honey, you are the light. And for whatever reason, that was exactly what I needed to hear, that kind of esoteric, cheesy, like, you're the light. But it fucking worked. Like, that's what I needed to hear because then it was like, oh, shit. That's right. Okay. And so now I don't love the dark, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't love it, but I can sit in a dark room now without freaking out. I can drive on a dark road without freaking out. I can enjoy being outside in the dark and looking at the stars without freaking out, especially if someone's with me. Because I just remind myself, okay, I'm the light. It's going to be okay. I am the light. And for whatever reason, that was the clincher that helped me. All the other stuff, the affirmations and prayers and putting a white light of protection around yourself, none of that did shit for me. But just having somebody tell me, you don't have to be afraid. You are the light. As cheesy as that is, that was whatever my brain needed to click out of the hell I had created. That was it. And so now I'm a much more productive person. But again, I don't love the dark. Yeah. It's not like I'm hanging out in the dark, loving it, but I can handle it to the point where I'm not a mess in front of my kids. Yeah. So I think that's the most important part, I guess, for me.
Well, for me, it's weird. It goes back to the no door. See, I think if you had a door, I don't know if
for sure.
I don't know if you're afraid of the dark because you could close it. The fact that you didn't have that barrier, I guess that you had to, create barriers with like your eyes being closed, and you had to imagine a way to get through it versus just having the door. And
exactly. And I think back to that now and I'm like, what the hell is going on? They put me in the basement with no door? Like, come on, you guys.
Were you the youngest at that time?
I was an only child. So I don't know, man. So I was just down there, I mean, and they were doing the best they could do. I get it. I'm sure they thought it was fine, but I definitely complained about it. I didn't want, and there was, I believe it, if I recall correctly, there was one point where we switched bedrooms and my bedroom was the one upstairs and theirs was the one downstairs. And that was better. But the seeds had already been planted, man. And I was well on my way to a lifelong phobia. So I don't know, man, it was weird. And again, the last time we were on vacation, we were somewhere tropical. I think we were in Hawaii, and at night there were people snorkeling in the little cove there, and they were doing night swimming, and they had lights on their gear, and they were just kind of right in the cove, not out in the open ocean, just right there. And I just remember thinking, there is no way you could pay me enough to do that. I can't imagine being in actual dark water with a light on, looking out for like that. Just the thought of that makes my heart race. Like, ugh, no. I mean, so it's definitely still in there, and it's definitely a lifelong thing, but it's something I can kind of laugh at now. And I know I'm like, okay, like this is a thing. It's going to be okay. All those things you do to talk yourself out of it. So hopefully I'm able to just to keep up on not freaking out, at least not in front of my kids.
Well, that's a goal. I'm sure if your kids found out, they would probably.
Oh, they know. They 100% know. They give me shit about it. They're like, Mom's afraid of the dark. And I'm like, yeah, no, babe. It's true. You're afraid of spiders. We all have something.
Like, I'm surprised they just didn't, like, if you were the last one out of the room, like, they would just turn the light out before you were out or anything like that. Like, just playfully,
just to mess with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like, if you're in the attic or something, they just pull the chain or.
Oh my God. Yeah. See, that's the kind of thing like that would freak me out. Yeah, absolutely. Luckily they're not like that, but yeah, who knows though? They might be now if they listen to this. So funny, but it's weird. When you have a phobia like that, especially one that's pretty unfounded, and it, so there's I guess a certain amount of shame that you attach to it as well, because it's embarrassing to be afraid of something so silly, but we can't help it, And so I feel like, at least in my embracing of the fear, I taught my children that it's okay to have parts of yourself you don't understand, or maybe you don't like, but you still embrace that part of yourself because it is a part of you, and then now being able to talk about it, being able to kind of laugh at it, that helps me, I guess, feel like I'm in charge of it, even if it's a farce, and hopefully they can learn from that. And who knows, like, it's just such a strange thing. And I've spent a lot of time analyzing it, but I know it just comes from whatever my brain was thinking at that time when I was little in the basement all those years down there, and just on from there. But hopefully I don't ever have to go to that basement again. Let's just say that.
So do your parents still live in that house or no?
Oh, no. That house is long gone, been sold and remodeled and on. Yeah, that house hasn't been a part of my life for a really long time. So.
Well, that's
and
good.
What's funny is I love that house. Like, I have great the thing. Yeah, I have no sad memories associated with that house. Like, nothing bad ever happened there. It was great. I had a great childhood. My room was in the scary ass basement, and it sucked, and it made me afraid of the dark. Kind of crazy.
Not to mention, like, if you had nightmares, like, how long did it take your parents to get from where they were all the way down? Oh
my God, forever. It was like, and this was again, like 1980. So we didn't have, monitors and technology and all that. So they would literally have to, hear me yelling and then run through the kitchen, down the stairs, through the basement, it was pretty far away, So yeah, it was, but I mean, they were doing the best they could, with what they had. And it just happened to be like that. It was weird because there were 2 rooms down there. There were 2 bedrooms. And the second bedroom was pretty much I think it was just like storage. They weren't very big. They were tiny little, rooms. And now I did, before we got on this podcast, I did go look the house up on Zillow, and it looks like it's been completely redone and the basement's now finished. So it's like, painted with it doesn't look at all like the dungeon that I knew. So I think so hopefully that's a good thing for them.
For any future 3-year-olds that may be staying.
Maybe sleeping in one of those rooms down there. I know. So crazy.
Probably why you got into finance, to make sure that you had the money to finish any room.
Any basement or any room ever. Make sure there's lots of like recessed lighting, lots of opportunity. Yeah, but it's pretty good. I think a lot of us have things that we're afraid of. And I think when we own that fear too, like again, with my kids or even with my friends, just admitting it and knowing that it's silly, but that it exists and admitting it anyway and kind of owning it. When you do that for yourself, it kind of gives other people permission to do that too. And it kind of peels down any guards or layers that people have. And then it allows them to kind of look at themselves, you look at yourself kind of thing. And I really do try to do that with my kids and my husband. And just, hopefully we're looking at all of ourselves introspectively, trying to be better and help each other be better. It's just it's so strange. Being afraid of something completely unfounded it's a strange thing to carry with you, because again, it's silly, but you can't help it. It's weird.
Yeah. I've done that, and I'm afraid of snakes mainly. There's some other things I'm super afraid of, or
I feel like that has ground though. Like I feel because a snake it can bite you. Like I understand that fear. Like that makes sense to me. But
to me, the dark is just there's so many other things it could be because it's just all becomes part of the dark.
Exactly. Well, because it's your mind, right? Yeah. And your mind makes it so much worse than anything that could ever be there. And so it's untangible and it's nothing and everything at the same time. And the weight of that's why I think I always thought of it as water, because it just felt so heavy and so like stifling and suffocating.
Yeah. And I have a friend that she's a parent, but she doesn't have very good vision. So she doesn't like to sleep with her back to the doorway. So she always has her bed and everything to where she's facing the doorway because of that dark, and her fear was she still thinks about monsters under the bed. So she's kind of in the same boat you are, that there's a monster under the bed that she sleeps with her feet out from under the covers that she can be taken by said monster that's under the bed.
It's so strange how these things from our childhood just permeate and tattoo themselves into our mind and into our minds and just affect us our whole lives, isn't it? It's crazy.
Absolutely.
I don't know, but it's good. Actually, I told you when we were talking about doing this interview, even just typing about it really forced me to think about it for the first time in a while. Because that's the other thing is like, it's not like I think about it all the time, all day, every day, kind of thing. And so even typing my stomach started to get like turn over a little bit and get a little bit of knots and stuff. And I was like, okay, Melissa, remember, you can do this, and it does help to talk about it. And it's like, it deflates it a little bit,
Yeah. But it's inspiring that you're, like, I don't want my kids to be in the dark somewhere and me not be able to come to their aid if needed.
Exactly. Yeah, because you have to be able to parent, for God's sake. You can't let something as silly as the dark stop you from parenting. And it's true, because it does force you into that, because there's been many times your kids cry out in the middle of the night and I've had to rush in there even before I was okay, but that parental instinct does take over and you got to do what you got to do. Even if you're scared shitless, you got to rise to the occasion and you got to figure it out, because you have to be the strong one, and that's definitely helpful. In terms of my phobia, but yeah, it's just such a strange thing. Most people are afraid of, like you are, like snakes or spiders or, something tangible, tornadoes or earthquakes. I mean, I could see even living in California and being afraid of earthquakes because we have them all the time. That makes sense. But no, I'm the dark.
And neither of your children are afraid of the dark.
Not at all. Neither one of them were at all and have been. So it's like, yeah, my 9-year-old's like, it's okay, Mommy. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Thanks for that, hon.
You're special. I still love you.
Exactly. Exactly. No, they do. And again, and it helps them, I think, to see like their mom struggling, to know that we're not perfect. I think a lot of times too in parenting, there's this idea that kids have, that their parents have their shit together, or that they know everything, or that they're, this or that. And for me, at least with my kids, I'm very open in that I don't have all the answers. I'm doing the best I can. I'm going to make mistakes, cut me some slack. I'm learning how to parent you at the same time as you're growing up. So let's work together. I'm not perfect. And at least for me, that level of honesty has been helpful, because my kids go, oh shit. Okay. You're a person too? Oh my God, my mom is a person too. Go figure. What an amazing revelation, So
as your 20-year-old probably, may, end up having kids of her own at some point, she'll realize like, oh, wow, you get a more appreciation for how your parents, the kind of things your parents did when you realize like the time demands and the.
Oh my God, yes. And I think you forgive your parents for a lot of their stuff when you become a parent. I remember being mad at my parents for certain things, even putting me in the basement, for instance, and then you have kids of your own and you're like, oh shit, there's no manual. We're all doing the best we can. My parents were like 25 when they had me, super young. So they had no idea what they were doing. They were babies, struggling, figuring it out. And then you realize, okay, all right, I'll cut them some slack. Yeah. Hopefully.
You have a 9-year-old and still, but I mean, too, like the challenges change too. Like nowadays, like I couldn't imagine, like I was telling other parents my age, I'm like, I can't imagine having to talk about social media because we were all adults when we got it. So
right.
I don't know how you tell a kid what to, how to post on Facebook, what to post on Facebook, what to accept.
What's interesting, I mean, so the kids are, they're diligent. And by the time, if you think you're going to have a sit down with your kid and tell them anything about social media that they haven't already seen, you're probably late to the game. But with kids now, it's all about boundaries and setting proper boundaries. I will tell you that since Pet Stars premiered, I have had a huge influx of young children reaching out to me directly, both on my personal Instagram page, Melissa Macy, and then for my Jenny, who's my bearded dragon that is featured on Pet Stars, her Instagram, Unicorn Dragon Princess. I have kids reach out to constantly, and these are young kids, much younger than my 9-year-old, even kids that appear to be 6, 7 years old, sending me direct messages, sending me video chats, asking me to chat with them, asking me to be their friend because I appear to be a harmless motherly type with a lizard online, and so they're just reaching out to me, messaging me, asking me, and it scares me to death because I'm like, oh my God, where is your mom? I'm an adult. I could be anybody. I could be some 80-year-old man. You don't know who I am. And so that has then sparked a lot more conversations in our household about Instagram. So my 9-year-old doesn't have Instagram. She doesn't have any social media. We don't let her have anything like that. My 20-year-old obviously does because she's an adult. But so it's all about having conversations about what's appropriate and then following guidelines and not necessarily letting them have access to the internet at that age. My God, like all these kids with tablets and things that just have unfettered access to everything. I mean, it's just terrifying. So it requires diligence on the part of parents. I will say, when you give your kid a tablet, whether it's an iPad or a Kindle or an iPhone or whatever, you're opening up their world in a way. You're giving them access to all these things. And of course they want it because their friends are on there and everything. And that's great, but it requires a whole nother level of parenting involvement. Where you're diligently monitoring things and keeping track of things and, every conversation they have and this and that. And so it's definitely interesting. A lot of the apps and stuff have tools for parents. I know Facebook, the Kids Messenger, has a lot of things for parents so you can see everything, but man, they're still coming up with more. And it has to be a conversation starting very early. And it has to be a continually evolving conversation because you can't scare your 7-year-old with the facts of internet predators the way you can maybe scare your 13-year-old. That's a different conversation, you know, but you definitely have to have it, and you have to have an ongoing kind of amount of communication. And even then shit can happen. And it's just, it's scary. It's a whole new world out there and everything's permanent. I'm so glad it didn't exist when I was in college. That's all I have to say.
And that's because I'm your age. I'm 44 and it just mind blows me, the stuff like people creating accounts for kids with their names on. I'm like, why would you give them that even? Why not give them a nickname or something that
just any school event. I see parents all the time that go to the little parade they do on Halloween where all the kids parade around in their costumes, and see parents videoing it, putting it on Facebook Live, tagging the location, so geolocating the exact place where your kid is. Here's, my kid in Mr. Clark's class, 5th grade, go George Washington. You know what I mean? So you're basically telling the world where your kid is all day. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. So hopefully parents can remain diligent. That's something to actually be afraid of. Internet predators, like that's a tangible fear. Like that's something that would make much more sense. But yeah, no, it's constant communication, and you just have to be on it. It's scary. I feel bad for parents now. It's just so much. I grew up in the 80s, we had free range. My parents were never around all summer. We were just outside.
Yeah. But
nobody was around.
But that's what I mean is like with the internet, everything, it's not just local. Like everything.
It's not.
That's what I realized is as a kid, people were like, we don't remember all this bad stuff. I was like, that's because we only got news from one area. Like I grew up in Houston, so I knew there was a lot of crime in Houston, but we didn't have, CNN telling us every bad thing that's happening at every city, every hour of every day. You only heard bad news at 5, 6, and 10 p.m. And even then, it wasn't. It was 30 minutes of world news and basically an hour of local, because you had the world news at 5:30 with Peter Jennings, and that was it. And nowadays, now we hear everything. If there's a school shooting in some obscure school, like in the middle of nowhere, we know about it, and then it makes you think, oh my God, the whole world's going to hell. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And like you said, I don't think it's really getting any worse. I think we're just learning about it. We just hear about it instantly, and we hear about everything. And they mostly report negative stuff because if it bleeds, it leads. So we're hearing I stopped watching. I can't. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially during election times, I can't watch news. So I'm just like, I'm just I'll go to CNN.com or whatever, but I don't need to watch physically any news because I just can't handle it. It's too much.
How are your kids handling pet stars? Like, are they, as your 9-year-old now, like a celebrity by proxy, basically, at her class?
It's funny. They take it with a grain of salt. I mean, when Pet Stars premiered, my daughter was so excited. My 9-year-old, like she told her whole class, but they were in the midst of online distance learning, so she wasn't physically in school. She hasn't physically been in school since March of 2020. She should be going back this fall, hopefully, fingers crossed. They'll be all opened up. But so she, made an announcement in class, and everybody was all excited about it. And there was a moment where, she felt pretty cool, and everybody was asking questions and wanted to see our lizard and this and that. And then here, in our community, it's kind of fun because some of my neighbors, they knew about the show, but their kids didn't know, and so they just kind of put the show on. Put Pet Stars on. I'm like, hey, let's watch the show about pets. And then a couple minutes in, I'm on screen, and they're like, oh my gosh, is that Melissa? That's Mila's mom. Oh my gosh, and it was like super exciting for them, and fun. So it's at this point, it's just been kind of a fun thing. My kids, I think, are a little bit, they're not tired of Pet Stars, but I mean, I've been working for Pets on Q for 5 years now, and we've been working on the show the whole time. I mean, from pitching the show to making a sizzle to making a pilot to filming the first season to do that. It's been a long, drawn out process, and COVID made it even more long and drawn out. So I think at this point they're like, yeah, we've seen it. That's our mom. Yeah. Mom, make me a peanut butter and jelly. Like, to them, it's like no big thing. And also my husband's worked on so many different shows over the years, and he's filmed red carpets and, the Academy Awards and after parties and all this. And so they've seen a lot of stuff through him too. So I think just having grown up in kind of the Hollywood area, my kids are like, yeah, no big deal. Everybody has their own reality show. Netflix gives deals to everyone. Like, yeah,
I was going to say, I was going to ask if having dad there kind of, I guess, tempered that a little bit. Just totally did. And it's funny because, again, my husband, who has been incredibly supportive of this whole thing, but even at the beginning, he's like, are you sure you want to be on a reality show? Because his take was very different. Now our show isn't anywhere close to the ratings and numbers that a Jersey Shore has. We're very small potatoes, and we don't have drama. We don't have, eliminations and drinking and party. That's just not our formula. So it's very different than what he typically works on, but his whole, and he does a lot. He used to work on the World Poker. He worked on the World Poker Tour for like 20 years too. And so his take on it was kind of like, reality show, you really don't want to do that. And I'm like, yeah, we do. And he's like, oh, no, really you don't. And I'm like, nope, really we do. And that's what we're doing. And he was like, okay. And then when he saw the show though, and how different it was, he was like, okay, this is fun. I get it. Yeah.
still reality,
But I mean, you do need to, even if it's that close, you benefit from hearing, that kind of detraction, just so you can you have that at least in your mind too. At the same time, okay, here's what the naysayers will say.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another reality show, and how could it makes you kind of, I guess, think your way out of that situation. Like, my day job is also tech support, so I always try to what I always call eat around the problem. Like, I'm just like, how can I find an alternative? How can I find a different, when I write comedy, how can I find the other angle? Not the one that everybody's thinking. How can I go a different direction? And so hearing that from, someone that close and someone, you love, okay.
It definitely grounds you. It keeps you grounded in your own reality, and it keeps things,
How can I make a show that he'll enjoy? And
exactly, and my husband is a huge cheerleader for us in the show, and it's kind of like, it's the fact that we even got a show on Netflix is just a crazy, we feel very, very lucky and blessed for it. And we're excited, to see what happens with it. But we're also kind of like, okay, now what are we going to do with the business? And, we have a booking platform that we're launching for people to come and book, animals through our site. And we have a lot of tech we're building out, and we're, making our team bigger. And, my husband has stuff that he's working on, and we're going to be producing a theater show later this year together. Because my husband and I both come from theater backgrounds. That's how we met in college. And so we're really excited to put a show up. And, so we have a lot of things that are happening outside of it, because it is weird. It's weird for my dad in Salt Lake City, to watch my silly reality show, here. And it'd be like, my dad texted me and he goes, hey, and I don't know, Ryan, if you've seen any of the show, but there's an episode of our show where we get a little bit funky, and, I'm like the hippie of the show, and I'm into crystals and Reiki, and I have a meditation pyramid and da-da-da-da-da. And I really do have a meditation pyramid, and I really do have crystals and Reiki and all that stuff. And so my dad texted me, goes, where's this pyramid? You've never busted out the pyramid when I'm there. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, because it's not your thing. It's under my couch. He's like, you really meditate in it every single day? And I'm like, well,
maybe twice.
Not every day, but I do meditate in it. And he was just like, this is weird. Like,
you're probably gonna make me double dip today. Just say, you're not really helping this situation. You're not.
Exactly. So it's just funny, other people's take on it, versus your own, and then just, what happens after that. And, who knows, but yeah, we're excited. It's been an interesting couple of years. I'll tell you that.
Well, and just living in Los Angeles, like I get a lot of that stuff because there's just a lot of stress. There's a lot of, you're like you said, there's traffic, like somebody was telling me that they went to New York, and literally like one day they were going to somewhere, and it was like they did the map. It was like 1.4 miles travel time, 2 hours, 10 minutes.
Oh my God. Yes. It's crazy. I actually do miss, look, COVID was horrific, is horrific. It's still ravaging places. And I want COVID to be done. That being said, when we were in the height of quarantine, in the height of lockdown here in Los Angeles, it was glorious because there were no cars on the road. I could drive to Santa Monica in like 20 minutes. There was hardly any pollution. The skies were clear. There was no, you know what I mean? It was so nice, and now, even just yesterday, just driving anywhere, it was like, damn, like we're back. Here we are. We're right back into the thick of it. A million people on the road. Here we go, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's why I was like saying, everybody has to find their own way of, I guess, dealing and de-stressing with that. And so
absolutely. But it's just funny too. And I had to explain to my dad, and I was like, with the reality show, I go, this is Colleen and I, Colleen and I, Dad, who we are. I said, but you can see also how they're making us into characters that are a little bit bigger, a little bit louder, a little bit more intense than we really are. And that's what reality does, I guess. So in the show, I'm, very much, meditating my pyramid every day, crystals and Reiki and all of that to an nth degree that maybe is a little bit dramatized, because that's a fun character, and it's fun because Colleen's not like that. And so it makes us have some, something to have drama over, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
And it was just funny. Even my mother-in-law, my darling Mormon mother-in-law who lives in Utah County, same thing, called Andy and was like, does Melissa really meditate in a pyramid every day? They were very concerned about my meditation practices as shown on Pet Stars, just because it's different, and my husband would be like, yeah, Mom, Melissa's weird. You knew this when we got married.
That's
so.
See, you explaining it to your dad is one thing. Him explaining it to his mom's 2 sentences.
Totally different. Yeah, you knew she was weird. This is what we signed up for.
Like you're defensive, like it's under the couch. It's, like you're having to justify it. He's just like, she's weird.
Yep, exactly. Too funny. And you kind of have to embrace that part of yourself too if you're going to put yourself out on TV like that, because people are going to find out. So you might as well tell them before they find out so you can own the narrative kind of thing,
Yeah, absolutely. I thank you for doing this, Melissa. I'll let you.
No problem.
Get you back to your screenless Sunday. As your 9-year-old's probably just glaring at you somewhere. Just.
Well, she has been silent and she's upstairs. So I bet you money she's up there on her iPad right now, just like living it up because she knows I'm down here on my laptop doing this interview.
And that's so weird too, is like, that's how kids live it up these days. Like we didn't.
Oh my God. We didn't have when I walk my dog on a beautiful spring day and it's 70 degrees and sunny and I'm in this beautiful neighborhood and there's not a single kid outside, it kills me. I just go, my God, youth is really wasted on the young. There's nobody out here throwing a ball, riding a bike, playing soccer, roller skating, nothing. It's just they're on their screens, which is why it's even more important, I think, that everybody do a no screen day or time or afternoon or anything that you can do, because my God, these kids half these kids don't even know how to ride bikes anymore because they never do. It's crazy.
Well, where can people find you on social media when they go back to Monitor Monday?
Oh man. So probably the best place to find me is on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Melissa May C. And in my bio at Instagram, there's a link tree that has all my other Facebook and LinkedIn and my podcast and all those things. So I would say find me on Instagram and check out my link tree, and you can find me basically anywhere else. And then now, Pet Stars is streaming on Netflix in, I think, 29 different languages. So please check it out. It's a pretty fun, family-friendly show.
I definitely will. I appreciate you doing this. And I guess if you want to promote your Bearded Dragons Instagram as well.
Oh, yes. My bearded dragon, Jenny, who is on the show. She's also on Instagram at Unicorn Dragon Princess. And she's a super fun bearded dragon, and she loves to kind of hang out and put little hats on. And it's pretty silly. She's got 3 times as many followers as I do. So that's good for your self-esteem. When your lizard has more followers than you, what does that tell you?
Tells you got to get more hats.
Apparently. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for having me on to talk about my phobias and the show and everything. This has been really fun. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again for doing it.
All right. Have a good day. We'll talk soon.
So that was Melissa. I love how she keeps taking steps to resolve this fear. And it's amazing how such a little fear can sometimes just take over all of your senses. I thank Melissa for doing that. It was a really fun interview. And check out Pet Stars on Netflix. It's an amazing show. It's really cool. It's something you can watch with your family and your kids, and it's really neat to see all the animals and how much just love for animals that Colleen, Melissa, and the owners of these dogs and cats and other animals just have. You can check out Pets on Q on Instagram, as well as anywhere else. If you do have an animal you want to represent, check out Pets on Q at their website. Would be posted in the show notes. You can follow Melissa at Melissa May C at Instagram. Also, Pet Stars on Netflix is on Instagram. Those accounts will be in the show notes, as well as her lizard, Dragon Princess, will be in the show notes. So yeah, that was a fun interview. We're going to try to do some more kind of spooky, scary fears for the Halloween season. And so I've got a couple more. I've done a few interviews. I got a couple more coming. So stay tuned for more episodes. They're on the way. If you like what you hear, please leave a review. I love hearing from you guys, and hopefully it just boosts the visibility of the show. And so I appreciate you guys for listening. As for me, I will be at the Addison Improv this Wednesday. So if you're willing to check out some comedy, come check us out. We'll be having a great time. After that, it'll be a couple of private shows, and then I'll be back in Wichita. January, right after my birthday weekend, I'll be 45, which is hard to believe, but that's where we are in life, and getting older and having a great time and working all kinds of different jobs and trying to make money to survive. Thank you guys again for listening to the Sum of All Fears podcast. Have a wonderful week. And now some thank yous for the folks that make this show possible. Thanks to Barry Whitewater for my art and graphics. You can follow him on Instagram at bwhiteh2o. Get it? H2O like water. You can also follow him on Facebook, Music. A huge thank you to Gunnar Olsen for the wonderful music provided for this podcast. You can follow him on Instagram at gunbuns, that's GUNBUNS, as well as his website, gunnarolsen.net. Check out some of the samples that he has recorded. They're amazing. He's an amazing percussionist. If you want to follow the show, we've got a Facebook group, Sum of All Fears. Instagram, Twitter, you can find us at Some Fear Fans. If you have some feedback for the show, email me at somefearfans, SOMEFEARFANS @gmail.com. I'll be happy to take those into consideration. Also, if you'd like to be a guest, email me at somefearfans@gmail.com. We can try to iron out some details and get that settled in. Give us some feedback. If on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a review. It makes the show bigger, and it's not going anywhere. I'm going to record as many shows as I possibly can. If you want to follow me on social media, I am at Ryan Perrio. It's RyanPerrio on all social media platforms. You can follow me there, and you can check me out at ryanperrio.com, my website. I'll try to list upcoming shows there as well. It's been kind of spotty because as soon as I set it up, that's when the pandemic happened. And everything's kind of just in a holding pattern. Thanks again for listening to the Sum of All Fears podcast. Next week, we'll have another guest with another fear. Thanks for listening.